All right, so this is the our journey to $1 million. It took us it took me about 10 years to get to that point. And reflecting back, I realized that there's actually a ton of lessons learned that I've discovered along the way. And I've been trying to go back in time and kind of remember what those lessons were and put them into the form of a talk, and then maybe eventually like a book, kind of follow in Zach's footsteps. But this is what I actually think about a lot. So I want you to think about 2030. This is our Christmas party in the year 2030. So it's around November, December timeframe. We've got performers there. It's a big deal. It's in Las Vegas. I've flown all roughly 500 of our employees into town, and they're plus one, so we got 1,000 people in the audience. Drinks are flowing. We got a lot of waiters and waitresses running around. Got a couple bars there. It's a big deal. We got some performers. It's a big dinner gala. We've got an MC, maybe someone like Zach. Actually, it will be Zach. It's going to be Zach. Zach is the MC. And so after some dancing and some drinking, Zach settles everybody down, and he's in the middle of the dance floor, and he's doing a great job keeping everybody entertained. And then he turns the microphone over to me, and this is the event that I've been thinking about for the last 20 years, which is, what am I going to say at this point? So I grab the microphone, and I'm looking around at all the people in the audience, and there's some people that I know, there's a lot of faces that I don't know, and I start to tell the story of how we got to $100 million. And it all starts with the story I'm about to tell you today. So what I just told you was the vision of the future, but in present tense. I'm there. And this is actually something that I've thought about for the last couple of weeks or months, is what's it really gonna feel like to achieve this goal that I've set for our company of $100 million. So that's me. We've got a podcast called Journey to $100 million. And so we've made it very public that we want to get to this goal. And we've also made it very public that we don't know how we're going to get there. It's a huge goal. But what we did do is we got to $1 million. And so I want to talk about how we got to $1 million. By the way, that's Kevin Daisy, for those of you that don't know him. He's not a part of this talk. And Shannon thought it'd be cool to make him a little devil, so. But yeah, we're going to talk about how we got to $1 million. We're a little bit past that now. We've got a long ways to go, obviously, to get to $100 million. And we're chronicling all of this on our daily podcast. These are all the things that we're going to really talk about today. And I want to step you through it. So this is kind of a story of how we got there, but there's a ton of lessons learned. And so after each little segment, I want to talk about the takeaways and the things that I've learned that you can apply to your business as well. So the first thing I want you to think about is this even for you? All right, so entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Yeah, entrepreneurship is definitely not for everybody. And if it's for you, awesome. If it's not for you, that's fine too. It's a tough journey. There's a lot of ups and downs and a lot of lessons learned, and you're gonna get banged around, and you've got to be resilient, and you have to continue to want it more than anything. My journey started back in high school before I could drive. So this is back in my skateboarding days. And I wanted a skateboard. It was like $120 with the nice trucks and everything else, where you could pick out like the wheel color and the truck color and the deck. And you know, it took like a couple weeks to get it all assembled and shipped to you and all that stuff. Yeah, $120 was a big deal when I was in like 8th grade. And my parents wouldn't buy it for me. Right? I mean, it's a lot of money. So what did I do? I went out and I bought blow pops in bulk, in big bags. I brought it to school and I would sell them. I think it was 3 for a quarter, which surprisingly I made money on that. And I made enough money where I bought this skateboard. So that was my first opportunity to invest in myself and see if I can make something of this entrepreneurialism, which I had no idea what that word was at the time. I just knew that I needed $120. I also did things like cut grass in the neighborhood. I made really good money cutting grass. So when you borrow your dad's lawnmower and you go across the street and you make $15 in about 20 or 30 minutes, that's good money. You know, at about 15, 16, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that now as a side gig. I shoveled snow, I delivered newspapers. So basically any way that I could find to make money in my neighborhood, I did it. And so these are not difficult things, but it's just things that people needed done. So I started to provide services. When I was a little bit older, still in high school, around sophomore year, my dad got out of the Air Force and he was searching for his next career, and he went to a franchise conference where a bunch of franchisors were pitching that people should buy into their franchise. This is up in Northern Virginia. He bought into a franchise called West Coast Video, which I think is defunct at this point. It was based on the East Coast, and the whole point was, when you think of movies, you think of Hollywood. So they kind of leveraged that brand of Hollywood, and they called it West Coast Video. He opened up his first store in Alexandria, and I saw him with his first store. He'd be gone all day. He'd come back at about 9 or 10, maybe 11 o'clock at night after the store closed, and then he'd be up for 2 or 3 hours, and he'd be doing the books. And then he was always late filing taxes. He'd always get an extension, but he always had just reams of paperwork that he just never quite got to. Now, I mean, eventually he got to. He never got in trouble with the IRS or anything like that, but there was always something to be done. Either he was in the store, or he was training someone, or he was home doing the books, or avoiding the books. But there was always something to do. And so that was kind of my first glimpse of that, wow, this guy's really working hard. When I was in college, he decided to open a second store. So this is 2 video stores now. In the second video store, this is back in the day where, if you guys remember from VHS, you would, back in the day, you would take the cover of the VHS, you'd bring it up to the counter, and you put it down, and then the clerk would take it. They'd go find the actual video back on the shelf, because the videos were like $100 a pop, so they didn't want them out there where people could just take them and leave. And then you'd get the video, but not the cover. And then, so he bought the inventory of a store that had that system, but it was right around the time where these stores were converting over to like Blockbuster was, where the video was out there on the floor. And he needed someone to take about 3,000 covers and 3,000 videos that were not in order and match them up for his new store. Does that make sense? So he needed help. And this is right around my summer break from college. And so I got a bunch of my friends together, and we would go out to a storage unit about the size of this room. And every day we'd go in, we'd take out boxes and boxes of covers and videos, and we'd put them out in the roadway in between the storage units, and we'd sit there for hours just matching them together.
Were they matched on the tape? How did you know?
We would look at the tape, and it would have the name or some sort of serial number, and then the box, and boop, that was it, and then we put it off to the side. That one was matched. So it took weeks to do this, but I helped him get up and running, and he was paying me, and I was paying my friends, so I had kind of like this little business going. It was a really good experience. I helped him out at the counter. I would help with customers every once in a while at one of the 2 stores. He eventually shut this down, and the whole franchise went away as well. But that was a big glimpse into how entrepreneurialism works and all of the things that go into it. The running of the store, all the employee problems that he had, inventory, dealing with customers, all that stuff. So I wanted to do this in my own business when I graduated. I was a construction project manager when I first got out of college, because I went to Virginia Tech as a civil engineer. And so I was in that field, and I got an idea back in about '98 for a website. This is going to sound familiar, but this is a website, and this is the badass logo that I had created, Measured Mile. And the website would take homeowners that needed some work done in their house, and it would match them with contractors that wanted to do that kind of work. Have you heard of this system? There's a website out there that does this now, Angie's List. Yeah, so it was Angie's List before Angie thought of it. I used a program called Microsoft Front Page, which was basically like Microsoft Word, but you could then export it to a website, HTML. And I pushed it to its limits. I hired a freelancer. I paid him about $5,000 in total, and he did the extra heavy lifting. And as he would give me the code, I would look at it, and I'd see what he did, and then I'd bring it into the code base. Within about 3 weeks, he wasn't coding quite as much as mentoring me, and he was teaching me how to do HTML. And that led to this whole path that I've been on ever since, which is software development and then eventually digital marketing. So I put $5,000 in a measured mile. I made $30 on it. The $30 was a banner ad that I sold to some insurance company, I think. Mortgage company. I think that's what it was. And they stiffed me. So I never actually made any money off of it. $5,000 in, $30/0 out. That was my first business. I didn't do very good. So for me, at least, entrepreneurialism was not something that I went to school for. I went to school for civil engineering, but I had been in entrepreneurialism for a long, long time. I don't know if that's a requirement, but I know that that's my experience, is that I was in it and it's kind of always been around me. And it's taken a lot of time. So I started, like I said, back in 8th grade, like the very first time. So if you're thinking about, for me, that was my experience. If you want to apply my experience to starting a business, if you haven't already started a business, or if you've kind of started it, but you haven't really gone all in, like now's the time, because using my experience as a benchmark, it takes a long time to get up and running and learn everything you need to. And even with the experience with my dad, my dad was in it for years and he was still struggling. So start now if you're going to do it. There's no better way to learn how to run a business than to run a business.